Thank you guys for having me today. I really appreciate it. As I was really thinking about looking at this room of amazing leaders that we have, it was really humbling trying to put together a presentation to talk about how we're going to enhance the employee development platform and speak to you about some great things today. We have amazing leaders that have inspired me and my team to do some incredible things, so it was very humbling to be here. The next 30 minutes, I was thinking about what we wanted to accomplish today and how we're going to share how Bartaco has been using data to enhance our employee development. When I was preparing the speech, the one thing I knew I did not want to do was stand up here for 30 minutes and tell you how we've changed the way we've looked at data and tell you the new systems and processes that we've done and celebrate all the wins we've had over the past 2 years and glorify some numbers up here. My team's here, they do an amazing job, they can answer those kind of questions. I didn't want to share that, but what I did want to share was more the philosophy on how we take data and look at employee development, because employee development is not a number, it's a qualitative information. We're talking about people, not numbers. Today's day and world, we're constantly surrounded by data all the time. As a society, we've come to just simply love data. We wear smartwatches, we wear fitness trackers, we have Elon Musk putting chips in people's brains to get more data. And we're constantly surrounded by it, and we're constantly pushing and pulling data all the time. And I remember not too long ago, our restaurant business was very analog. Might be dating myself or some of us in the room that remember this. I remember starting and putting reservations in a book, right? And if that book left the host stand, come hell or high water, someone was paying, right? And so rapidly, technology took over our industry. It seems like almost overnight. Technology was on a good run, and now recently, as we all know, it is in a rocket ship. And every move that we make is tracked. Every decision that we make is analyzed. Every preference that we have is already predicted by AI. It's a little creepy. But yet as a society, we love data. As if all the push and pull of data is not enough, we continue to find more ways to get information every single day for our employees and for ourselves. We subscribe to these things called newsletters. Anybody know those? And every day, there's more and more and more information that shares data about how we're supposed to feel and what we're supposed to do, and how we're supposed to stack up versus the industry. And day in and day out, we read all these things, and I will tell you, at least from my point of view, it is exhausting. Because each day we look at data and we use it as a benchmark for ourselves and say, how am I supposed to prepare? How am I supposed to stack up? What am I supposed to be doing? And where are my opportunities as a company? What I find ends up happening, and philosophically at Bartaco, we look at this and say, we get so consumed with all the data that we have every day in our life that we're constantly looking out the rear view mirror, or at best in our side view mirror. Because we don't have time to look out that front windshield. And when we do, oftentimes it doesn't have to do with our employee, it has to do with our guest. We're trying to predict behaviors and trends, or look at upcoming holidays and events and all the things that are happening. Or we talk about things like the impact of the economy, the $1 trillion in credit card debt, the 74% student loan payment, 401k cash outs, all the things that we know. We talk about our guests, and we rarely talk about the forward-facing side of our employee. And what happens when we do that is we start using terms that at Bartaco we think are archaic, like turnover and retention. We put these words on a pedestal as if this is the data we're trying to drive and this is the most important thing. And I challenge the room, and what we do differently at Bartaco is we don't talk about these numbers, because those numbers are a result of what you do before you get there. These numbers are a byproduct of all the things that we should be doing as we're looking out the front windshield of our car. But it's very hard to do. We constantly look at Bartaco and we want to leave these archaic stats behind. We want to embrace the insights that are coming ahead. And it sounds great philosophically standing on stage and say, doesn't that sound cool? Especially when you're dealing with the world of operators, we all know how operators are. I'm one at heart, so I get it. We want numbers, we want present day, I want a scorecard, and I want to look at the quantification of what I do every day. Don't talk to me about emotions and feelings and stuff, that's not fun. But the reality is, with an employee development program, that's what it's all about. And a lot of times we have this fear of turning back. We tend to overcomplicate things a little bit in our business. We tend to go down a road, and when it's not working, we say, well, we'll add another process, another system, something on top of it to have this make more sense. I'll share a story with you. Back in 2008, I left a big corporate company to start a restaurant business. Terrible idea, by the way, bad timing. But at the same time, a good friend of mine stayed as a director of this company, and we stayed in close touch. We were talking pretty regularly, and we'd gone a few weeks and didn't chat, and I called him, I said, how's everything going? And he said, I have a story for you. He said, a few weeks ago, our analytics team said, we figured out a way to fix our top line sales while the traffic erosion. If we can just sell one more appetizer to every table, we can be flat in sales. This is a win. So they went out and they put this whole program together and said, here's what we're going to do. They did it fast. We're going to get an appetizer at every single table. And the end of the first week came, and they were all excited for the results, and guess what happened? Absolutely nothing. So instead of turning back, what did they do? They came and they said, well, clearly we didn't do a good job. I want every general manager certifying every single server. I want a tracking sheet that gets rolled up to the regional director. I want to see it as the CEO, and we create a bigger process. So they do that. At the end of week 2, guess what happened? Nothing. Zero result. So instead of looking back and deciding that we're doing something wrong, what do you think they did? Well, regional directors, you got to get in the stores because those GMs suck. They're not doing their job. You go in and validate it. So my friend was in the store, and he's listening to the servers, and he saw this young high school girl go up to a table. And she was taking the order, and she took a step away, and she went back, and she said, you don't want an appetizer, do you? And he pulled her off to the side, and he said, hey, how come you said that? She goes, well, I didn't think they wanted one. He said, well, why did you think that? She looked down, she looked up, and she said, well, they're my parents' age. And he goes, I don't understand, what does that mean? She took a deep breath, and she said, well, my dad was laid off 3 months ago. He's working at the local hardware store right now to make ends meet while he's interviewing during the day. About a month later, my mother was laid off. She's working at a retail store right now, same as my dad, trying to make ends meet. I picked up this job to help my family make ends meet. When I saw them at the table, I assumed they couldn't afford it because they were the same age as my parents. My buddy immediately knew what happened. He got caught in what we called an activity trap. This happens very often when it comes to employee development. We don't get the result we wanted, so what do? We change the action. And when the action doesn't change the result that we want, what do? We change the action again. And what we forget is there's something more deep-rooted when it comes to these types of decisions that we make when we use data every single day. Is that the experiences that our employees have or have had drives the beliefs about how they act in our restaurant. And that belief changes the actions and how they work inside of our restaurants. We believe at Bartaco that our job is to change the experience of the employee. And the challenging part is all of us are here because we want to find ways to do that. But as an industry, we can agree that we honestly do a terrible job as an industry developing our people. That's why our turnover tends to be so high. So the experience of most of our employees that walk in the door is terrible when it comes to development. So no matter how robust our programs are and how proud we are of them and how we can sit here and claim numbers that create a narrative, the reality is our team doesn't believe us because someone else failed them. And that's not our faults. The fact that we have a group like this here is the best part because we are all trying to change that norm, but we are a small percentage of many. When we think about this at Bartaco and how we can do this the right way, we want to start to quantify the experience part of the job, not the end result, which is the turnover and retention. We want to find ways to quantify how we're changing the belief of our employees every single day. We want to quantify how the experience is improving at the base level and if we are changing their mindset on what development means inside of our industry. And that's very hard to do. We try to simplify this very much in the world of, I could say, a former coach, because he's not coaching anymore. Bill Belichick in his locker room had one sign that says, do your job. We post a lot of things in our alleys or our back of the houses that talk about values and mission statements and all these favorite quotes, and those things are great. But at the end of the day, we have one thing to do, and it's to do our job. And us in this room, as leaders of people, as coaches, as mentors, as trainers, our job is to change that experience and find ways to pull data in to quantify that and understand that. It sounds a little easy, and there's two ways we approach this. One's a qualitative way and one's a quantitative way. The first is something I call mutual mentorship. If you were in Rachel's presentation yesterday at Opus, she talked about us managing 4 different generations of people right now, from boomers to Gen Z. And it goes without saying that those generations all want very different things and are all very challenging in their own regard. And oftentimes, we sit here and say we think we have the answer that's a one-stop shop or a silver bullet that's going to work for everybody. And oftentimes the way we get that, anybody in this room ever done an employee survey annually? Put your hands up. Just a couple. Tell me if this sounds familiar. You complete an annual survey, you get all excited about it, you put a date down, you say, hey, I'm going to finish the survey by this date. I'm all excited about the information I'm going to get, right? And that date comes, and do you ever hit your percentage? Never the first time. So we extend it a week and perhaps 2 weeks and incentivize it to get more data back. And then when we get the information back, we have to aggregate and analyze that data. Whether it's a third party or us or analytics team, that takes time. And then what do? We have a meeting, we roll out plans, and before you know it, 3, 4, and 5 months have gone by since we've done our employee survey. And based off the turnover numbers, if you were in the Chick-fil-A presentation yesterday, you saw those numbers as an industry. Half the staff that took the survey have left. Yet what we do is we get these plans together and say, I've got my 1, 2, and 3-year plan locked in because of this survey, which we know 3-year plans never stick. And we keep going with it. At the end of next year, we complete the same survey, and we sit here and say, look how good I did. Look at the numbers that I changed over the past year. And the reality is we're painting the narrative that we want ourselves to hear. Listen to any earnings call, it's prime season. As CEOs, we know how to manipulate numbers and create a great story. We're pretty damn good at it. What you have to make sure you're doing is you're looking at the narrative before the number. And at Bartaco, our philosophy when it comes to employees is I care about the narrative, not the number. I don't care about the turnover percentage number. I care about the narrative it's telling us. Because we have restaurants that are above industry turnover that I will put their culture up against anybody side by side. Because I have general managers that care about the employee's future. And they're developing them to be better employees, to be better fathers or mothers or husbands or wives or citizens of the community, and they're going off to find their next job, whether that's an engineer, a lawyer, whatever it may be. That's good culture. But yet you look and say, wow, your numbers are so high, you must not be a good restaurant. Because we look at the quantification of people by a number, not by the qualitative side of what we should do. So when you think about these generations that we are trying to manage, you have to be personalized. At Bartaco, we use something called 5 voices, very similar to a Myers-Briggs or a DISC test, which I'm sure some of you are familiar with. A lot of times these things are used during interview processes or maybe some team dynamics, and typically after the first 3 months, you never really talk about it very much. We heard it yesterday at Chick-fil-A do a great job of that, continuing that throughout their time. With us, those 5 voices is how you're wired, what motivates you, how you act during stress, how you are as a person. And it's the qualified data that we spend time at Bartaco. It's who you are and how you're wired. And those 5 voices live with you in perpetuity in our company. We teach you and train you a customized approach and a full development program that is built around you and how you learn and how you want to be taught. It's a very hard thing to do. Ask my L&D team, they want to wring my neck every day. But going that route and personalizing it with the amount of generations we have is imperative. And that's not just the end of it. When you think about the fact that boomers can teach Gen Z and Gen Z can teach boomers, but in most industries, boomers tend to be higher in the food chain just because of experience or time, right? And Gen Z tends to be more entry. In our business, career servers that are boomers are right next to bussers that are Gen Z, and they're working side by side in the same thing. It doesn't happen in as many industries as it does in our space. We push to try to get those people in the same room together and getting constant feedback from them. Because when we take these annual surveys and say, I have my 3 items I'm going to get done this year, it's going to make us win. The problem is, as we've heard a lot in this conference, it's about touching every single employee and getting everyone's feedback. Yet we make one plan for success with a few bullet points for multiple generations. If we don't embrace this culture of mutual mentorship and look at the qualitative side of data, which is how we look at it every day, we will continue to fail and have these numbers not improve as an industry. We take the quantitative side of this in something I call the people power process. This is not easy to do, but the way we've gone to quantify this is that we gather pertinent real-time data constantly. Every employee at Bartaco, when they clock out, they give us a review instantly, just like a guest. 1 to 5 with comments every single day. And the first 2 things that we do in the morning in order are guest feedback, employee feedback. Don't look at the other numbers because that drives everything. And just like a guest complaint, if the employee gives us negative feedback, the general manager, executive chef has 24 hours to sit down with the employee and find out what we did wrong. Because if you really want to be serious about using data to drive employee engagement and development, you have to ask for constant feedback. We do this every day, on top of monthly pulse surveys, on top of exit interviews, all the things that we've probably heard and done. But the daily grind of pulling in all of this data is what changes it, because the large-scale annual surveys are dated, and they don't monitor your progress as much as they should. If you're going to gather all this data constantly, there's one thing you have to do, and this is where it gets uncomfortable. You have to implement immediately. We share all these great plans that we talk about and plan out for years to come, and they take so much manpower and so much work, and we want them to be fully baked. If you want to evolve as fast as technology in our workforce is evolving, you have to be comfortable being uncomfortable that your plans will not be fully baked out. But you have to implement them immediately. At Bartaco, we would rather take this data and roll 10 things out on a monthly basis and only have 4 of them work than pick 1 or 2 and have them maybe work. Because I will tell you, the feedback from our team is that they appreciate that they are listened to. Because those annual surveys, there are employees that aren't listened to. That's the reality. One employee in the group of thousands feels they didn't get heard, and guess what happens? They leave. The number we're trying to impact, we're actually not paying attention to. We give them a voice every single day. If we don't implement immediately and constantly change, get comfortable with this, you fall into one of 3 camps. The ones that watch things happen, those that makes things happen, those that wonder what happened. The ones that wonder will be out of business. The sad part is most of our industry watches things happen. Those of us in this room are likely the ones that make things happen. That's why we're here. But it requires a lot of change constantly. And when you're changing based off this data every single day, the third and final step is refine, refine, and refine again. You have to constantly be working this muscle. We have a team dedicated to this every single day. It takes a lot of manpower. And it's challenging because you can sit here and say, well, I can't draw a line from this to these 2 amazing things we talk about in retention and turnover directly. But I can tell you what these are leading KPIs. These are the numbers that we focus on because this tells me if my team is engaged. I think the future what we need to be talking about is what is your team engagement number, not as what your turnover number. Because engagement will lead to better turnover. We all know that. But doing this every day is the hard way to do it. This is the forward windshield-looking perspective that we take at Bartaco, and it's extremely challenging. And too often or not, we take the easy approach of using turnover or retention or massive glorified plans that might look great in the presentation. I can post some numbers, but we know the real story. We challenge ourselves every day to have the hard conversations at Bartaco about our data. What doesn't look right? Because any one of us up here can stand and say, here's what is going well in my company. That's easy. We had our conference last year, and I challenge this with my team all the time. I say, choose your hard. We get to choose our hard every single day. Marriage is hard, but so is divorce. We get to choose our hard. Obesity is hard, but being fit is hard. We get to choose which hard we want to go down. Being in debt is hard, and being financially disciplined is hard. Communication is hard, and not communicating is hard. Life and work will never be easy. It will always be hard, and we choose every single day to make sure we are taking the hard road when it comes to our employees. There's nothing groundbreaking that I've told or shared with you today that you probably didn't already know. But when I think about what our industry needs to attack this number, similarly to what Andy had just said about moving this number down, it's a collective group of us looking at it differently. Because we've been looking at employee engagement and turnover the same way for years and years and years. And we're taking the same old song and dance and just putting lipstick on it, and we think it's going to get better. But taking data in on the qualitative side when it comes to the employee experience and taking it every single day and changing constantly as our world is the way we're going to get through this as an industry. If If I leave you with one thing today, I leave you with this. In the world of the employee, remember, data is your compass, not your destination. Leave the overwhelming stats behind and let the insights guide you towards a brighter and more agile future. Truly appreciate your guys' time. Left a QR code up. Our team is an open book at Bartaco. If anything that you want to know specifically what we're doing, we are all happy to share it. We share all of our information on everything that we do. It's just who we are. We believe that, to Andy's point, we can make an impact on the industry across the board. So anything we can do to speak to you or talk to anybody, feel free to let us know. But I appreciate your time. Thank you. Appreciate it.